Welcome, chemists, to our experiment that we're going to be demonstrating today and helping you to feel confident undertaking. This is the Investigating Chemical Reactions experiment. As you can see, I'm reporting to you again from my lab, i.e. my laundry room. And what I'm going to walk you through today is the setup that you will need, as well as any safety precautions. And then we'll go through the experiment itself. So the first thing that you're going to want to do that I would recommend is, before we get to the materials in your lab kit, I would suggest grabbing some supplemental materials. So first thing I would suggest is, from my kitchen, I grabbed an old baking sheet that I don't really care that much about. Now, the reason I would suggest grabbing this is because one of the things that we're going to do is essentially put your chemicals in this tray. That helps to keep them contained, as well as easier to clean up if there's a spill. So I'd grab one of these. The other thing you're going to need for this experiment is a pair of scissors. We will be modifying some of the equipment to make a gas collection chamber. So you'll need a pair of scissors. And I would also suggest grabbing bottled water or filtered water for this experiment as well. Now, what you're going to need from your lab kit for this particular experiment, Investigating Chemical Reactions, I think I said investing. I meant investigating. Investigating chemical reactions, it's a pretty equipment intensive lab, which means there's a lot of little moving pieces that we need. So let me show you what you want to pull out of your lab kit. So the first thing that you're going to want is this. So this is the chemistry safety set. Number one most important thing. This is going to have your safety goggles, your safety gloves, and your apron. All of this needs to be worn when you're doing the experiment. So we'll take a look at this. The other thing that you're going to need is, there is a little kit that says Investigating Chemical Reactions. You know you have the right kit because it has the same name as the experiment we're running. The other thing that you can look for to verify you have the right one is, there should be like a green saran wrap, green bubble wrap, some steel wool, some yeast. So you want this. So you've got your safety kit, you've got your Investigating Chemical Reactions kit. The other things that you're going to need is this guy. So Chemistry Chemical Set number 2. You can see it says Chemical Set number 2. Way to identify it is, there's a green container of copper 2 sulfate. That's the right one. So far, 3 bags, we're not even done. The other thing you're going to need is Chemistry Chemical Set number 1. So this is a pretty big one. You'll be able to see it because it has hydrogen peroxide as well as baking soda. So we want this as well. And then the last kit that we need is the Principles of Chemistry Equipment Set. So what you'll see is it says Equipment Set, and this has our general use items. So it has things like a thermometer, plastic cups, weigh boats, etc., as well as your scale. So you want to grab this as well. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bags of material. So that's what we're going to need for this particular experiment. Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to walk you through the initial setup or safety here. So again, what I would recommend is 2 things. You want to have with you all of your lab kit, but the other thing that you want is the actual PDF of the experiment, which is included in your lab module. But before we do anything else, before we touch any chemicals, we need to suit up. So you're going to open up your safety kit, and what you're going to see is there's going to be a pair of goggles, all right? There is quite a bit of plastic to unwrap in these lab kits. So you're going to grab your goggles, and you're going to put these on. Again, if you have glasses like me, they should fit over your glasses relatively comfortable. So you're going to put this on, and then you can adjust the tightness with these straps here to make sure that they fit flush to your head, okay? So goggles on. And again, we want to make sure that we're wearing goggles during all the experimental portions and we start handling chemicals. And you are required to take a selfie. The other thing you're going to go ahead and grab is your nitrile gloves. So again, these should be opened, and you can wear this pair of gloves as you run the experiment, right? Now, in terms of putting on the gloves, a couple little hints here. In case you haven't worn gloves before, they sometimes come a little deflated. You can always just open it up, blow a little bit of air in there, and then you can put your hands in comfortably. All right, so again, blow a little air. Your hands should fit in comfortably if you can make it work, all right? Now, the last thing that you're gonna wanna do for your safety kit is you're gonna want to assemble your apron. So your apron's gonna look a little bit like this, okay? So nice plastic apron, and what will come out of it are what look like a nice pair of shoelaces, all right? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna open up the apron at top. You'll see that there's these two sort of rivets. You're gonna take your shoelace and you're gonna create a neck loop so that you can wear this around your neck. The way that you can do that is you can pull it through and just tie a knot on your rivet, right? So knot on this side, pull it through, knot on the other side, okay? And of course you can adjust this for length depending on how tall you are, okay? So pull that through, tie a knot. All right, and over the head it goes. Then we also have some laces for the side so that you can tie around your waist and make that secure, all right? All right, so back to our setup. So now that you're fully safety geared, let's go through and let's start pulling out the equipment that you're gonna need from your equipment sets. Now again, I'm just gonna show you what all this equipment looks like and give you some suggestions on how you should maybe store these things and work with them as we go through the experiment. So I'm gonna pull out my baking tray here because anytime that I come across a chemical, I'm going to store it in that tray. So I'll show you what I mean. So what we're gonna need, again, I'm just pulling up the PDF of the lab. So if you're working on this experiment, you definitely wanna have this PDF open so you can follow along. So in your materials kit, we're gonna go ahead and pull all of this out and I'll walk you through the pieces and the components. So the first thing that you're gonna see is a vial of lime water. So it should be in a little plastic bag that looks like this. You're gonna open that up, and again, because it's a chemical, I'm gonna set it in my tray, all right? Now equipment we can keep separate, but I'll show you what I mean. We also have this steel wool. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put that on my tray as well. I also have my yeast. So in the picture in the lab manual, it's like a yellow pack, but in your case, it should just be a clear plastic bag of yeast that looks like this. That also goes on your tray. All right, now in terms of equipment, there are a couple things in this kit that we need to keep track of. So we have two plastic corks, one large, one small, so you can kind of see the perspective there. I'm gonna put those next to my baking tray. So I kind of like to keep my equipment and my chemicals separate. Again, I'm putting my chemicals in this tray because if for some reason I was accidentally to knock it over, the spill would be contained within the tray. So we're gonna keep that separate. We also have plastic tubing. We have a wood splint. We have a mini spoon, this little plastic mini spoon, two rubber bands. Okay, and last but not least, we have our glass large test tube. The glass large test tube is wrapped in this green bubble wrap. I'm gonna leave it in there until we get to that portion of the experiment. Why? Really common for this to go ahead and roll off the counter. So as long as it's wrapped in bubble wrap, we should be good. So I'm gonna set that here, okay? So that's everything from the Investigating Chemical Reactions kit. So I'm gonna set that aside now. Now what I'm gonna pull out is what I need from chemical set 1. So that is this big bag right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out the materials that we need. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up. And then there's a bag within a bag. Who doesn't love a bag within a bag? So we're gonna pull out our baking soda. Again, I'm gonna be putting my chemicals on my tray. So we've got our baking soda. And then within our bag, we're gonna pull out our hydrogen peroxide. We also have vinegar. Our vinegar is also wrapped in a layer of bubble wrap. So we're gonna go ahead and open that up. There should be like a little fold at the top that's essentially an envelope. So we're gonna open that up. That goes on our chemical tray. Okay. We're also going to pull out the magnesium ribbon, which should be here. So from chemical set 1, we have our hydrogen peroxide, our vinegar, our baking soda. Now what we need to do is we need to pull out our chemistry chemical set number 2. So that is this one right here. So again, this is the one that has the copper sulfate in it. This is where we want to go. So from this, we're going to be pulling out 2 particular items. So the first one is a strip of magnesium ribbon. It looks a little bit like this. So it's basically, almost looks like it could be a nice bracelet. But magnesium ribbon, we want to pull that out. And the other thing that we're looking for is hydrochloric acid. Now the hydrochloric acid, you'll be able to find it because the dropper bottle is a white color. And this is why it's really important we have our gloves and our goggles on, because hydrochloric acid is really caustic. We don't want that to get on our skin, and definitely don't want to get that in our eyes. But I'm going to go ahead and take that out, and I'm going to put that on my tray with my chemicals. And that should be everything that we need from chemistry chemical set number 2. So we can go ahead and set that aside. Now, as I mentioned before, you'll notice I'm pulling out a lot of materials here. As I mentioned before, this is a pretty materials intensive lab. So there is going to be quite a bit that we need to pull out. So now we're gonna get our equipment kit. So this is the big one. You'll see it has test tubes, thermometers, weigh boats, things like that. So we're gonna go ahead and pull this out because we need some equipment here. Now again, equipment I'm keeping secondary to my chemicals. So all my chemicals are in my tray, my equipment is right next to it. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull out our graduated cylinders. They look like this. Everything is wrapped in plastic, right? So every time we do an experiment, we're probably gonna have to unwrap these guys. But we're gonna go ahead and pull out these 2 graduated cylinders. One is bigger than the other. All right, so we have our graduated cylinders, the large and the small. We're gonna put that with our equipment. We're also gonna pull out the beaker. So the beaker should look like this. It's an opaque plastic and it should say 250 mils on it. So we want this one as well. All right, the other things that we're gonna pull out are the test tube rack. Now this looks a little funky, but basically it's this kind of folded cardboard box. And if you open it up like this, you'll see inside there's this, and you can uncollapse it, and then that's your test tube rack. And what you can do that's really helpful is if you take this cardboard box, uncollapse it, you can set this inside as an insert, and it'll essentially hold it open and stable for when we store our test tubes. So something that looks like that, right? So we want that test tube rack. Okay. The other thing that we want to grab are our 2 pipettes. So that should look like these little guys. They look like really big eyedroppers. So we want 2 of those. We also want a weigh boat. The weigh boat looks like, you can get it, it's a jam-packed kit. Looks a little bit like this. So they're taped at the sides. You want to go ahead and just grab one of these weigh boats and set that aside with our equipment. Okay. So weigh boat in the equipment pile. All right, we're almost there, I swear. I know it's a lot of material. Next thing we're gonna grab is there's a candle in here. Okay, we're gonna be playing with some combustion in this experiment, so we need some flame. So you've got your candle, you're gonna set that aside. You're also going to grab your glass test tubes. So the glass test tubes should be this. So glass test tube, it's wrapped in green bubble wrap again, just to keep it safe. I would go ahead and leave it wrapped in the bubble wrap until we use it. So we're gonna set that aside. And then the last thing that they asked for are the polystyrene test tube. So the polystyrene test tube just means plastic. So the polystyrene test tubes are gonna be with the pipettes, and they look a little bit like this, okay? But they're plastic. You can hear that, it's plastic test tube. So polystyrene test tube. All right. Now again, that's a lot of little individual pieces, but we're gonna use them all collectively during the course of this experiment. So one thing that I would recommend, oops, I almost forgot one thing. We have a couple little more things. We need forceps and a ruler. So ruler is also in the equipment kit, should look like that. And the forceps are blue. These little guys, they match the goggles, hey? All right, so we've got these little forceps as well. Now, what I would recommend at this point is you want to keep the bags that you have just unloaded. Like, for instance, this equipment kit, a lot of the stuff that we're using here is gonna go back into this equipment kit for other experiments. So make sure you don't discard it, okay? So we're gonna put that aside. We're also gonna put aside our other investigating chemical reactions kit for anything that we don't use. So your setup should look like this. You should have all your safety gear on. Your chemicals should be on this tray. Your equipment should be out in front of you. And with that, we'll be able to demo portions of the experiment in our next video.